We are back in Maya where I've created a new scene, and I'm going to go to my 4 views. In the front view I'm going to insert our image plane, import image. I'm going to go up, go to where I've saved my image in cutouts. It is window 2. Let's display the grid. And we're going to use this to try and match it as best as we can. We're probably not going to get exactly the same thing, but something good enough so that from a distance it's going to look like the same window. Okay, so there are different ways of creating this window. I'm probably not going to do it in the most straightforward way, but it's going to be in a way that's going to allow you to learn new things. So let's go. We're going to start with the cube as often, and I'm going to move this cube down. And you see, one thing we are noticing right away is that I can't see all my arrows, and that's because if I go to all my views, you see the image plane is exactly in the center of the universe, which is what you get by default. So what I'm going to do is move it back. So if I select the front view camera, and then let's go to the attribute editor. By the way, you can use Control A to select the attribute editor and switch between the attribute editor and the channel. So if I hit Control A, it's attribute editor. If I hit Control A again, I'm in the channel. Okay, so that's a quick shortcut, and that works on a PC. If you're on a Mac, it might be Command A. You can try both. So let's select the image plane node with our camera selected, and in center we can change these values to move the image plane up, down, left, right, back and forth. So we want to move it back in Z, so I want to move it give it a negative Z value. So to use, I could type in, for example, -10, and that would do the job. But another shortcut for you, and you're going to learn loads of these, is how to use this as a slider. So I'm going to Control left click. If I Control left click, I move by a small amount. If I Control right click, I'm moving by bigger values. Okay, so that's useful to do things interactively. However, I know that -10 is probably going to be fine for me, so now I can go back to this view and start building some geometry. So we've got our cube, and I'm going to place it right in the center of where the window should be, because then as I scale it wide, see, the problem is I don't see how far this goes, but I see how far this goes here. So since this is the middle of the window, and if I scale it from the middle, I know that if this is the edge of the window, this should be the edge of the window. Alright, and that's as best as I can see. The grid is actually getting in the way, so I'm going to hide it. See if I can see things better. That looks about right. Okay, I don't think my window is quite in the center. Okay, and let's scale it down a bit. Okay, so that's going to be, and let's make this a little bit bigger. That's going to be this this piece of wood. And then if I wanted to be really quick, what I could be doing is just create some other cubes like that, put one vertically, another one there, and that would be done. But I'm going to show you how this would be built by a joiner, I guess. Just as an excuse to show you some techniques. Alright, so what I'm going to do is rather than doing something like this, so I could do duplicate, so I just did Command D, and then I could move this up or rotate it by, say, 90 degrees, and then I could place it like that. That would work, right? You're thinking, yeah, but there's some interpenetration. There is, but if you look at it that way, you can't tell. You can tell here because it's preview, but look, if I do a render, you can't tell. So that's fine. You know, if it looks right, it is right. However, the reason why I'm not doing it that way is so that you can learn a couple of things. So what I want to do is build it as it would be built physically. So physically, this would be cut like this at a 45-degree angle, and 45-degree angle here as well, and then you would slot in another piece like that exactly here. There's no interpenetration with real physical objects. So that's what we want to do here as well. I'm just looking at the thickness, by the way. Oops, sorry. I It's going to be a bit thick for our window. And so how are we going to cut a 45-degree angle here? And I'm going to show you one way. So I could move. If I use move, how do I know that this is 45 degree? Difficult. So one way would be to select these and then rotate them by 45 degrees. But the problem is, we have two problems. The first one is, if I rotate, it's rotating around the center of this. So it's going to move this to the left and this to the right, like that. So that's not what I want. I want this to stay where it is. The other problem is that, how do I know that this is 45 degrees? Because here it's not giving me any information. You only have rotation values if you are changing the attribute of an object. Here, I know the rotation values, but if I select two vertices, it's not telling me the values in the channel. Alright, so let's fix these two problems. First problem, which is rotating around here rather than the center. Sorry, just need to, that's the 4 vertices we want selected. So how do I deal with that? Well, we need to move the pivot point, and this is very, very important. It's very important to be comfortable with the concept and with how to move the pivot point. The pivot point is the center of your selection. So when you select an object, you have a pivot point, which is where the manipulators are based. You can change it, right? And to change it, you have to hit key D. If I hit D, you see the cursor changes. And now I can move the cursor and move it anywhere. So if I go D and then move the pivot point, that becomes the center of my object. Okay, so now if I do a rotation for this object, the rotation is going to be around this point. Very, very important. Let me undo that. By the way, if the pivot point gets out of control, and let's say you've done something and it's moved here, what if you want to recenter it? You can go to Modify and Center Pivot, and that puts it back in the center of your selection, in this case the object. Let's go back to our problem. These 4 points. I want to move the pivot point where? Let me go to the front view. I want to move it down right here. Okay, so I'm going to press D, and then I'm going to grab the vertical arrow, and then I'm going to press V at the same time. So D is to move the pivot point, V is to snap to point, and then move down vertically. So you see I'm snapping vertically to either this point or that point, and release. Now I can do my rotation around this point. Great. So let's do that. Now we have the second problem though, which is, how do I know it's 45 degrees? So let's start rotating and see what happens. Okay, so we don't know what's happened here by how much I've rotated, but we can find out. Everything you do in Maya, and that's the second very, very important thing to understand, everything you do is a command. Alright, so without knowing it, I have just run a command. And you can see this command if you look at this. Don't be afraid, it looks like code, it looks nasty, but it's only here to help. So every time I do something, a command is run, something like this. So let me do that. You see, that's what I've just done. I've done a rotation around. There's a bunch of parameters we can ignore, but the last value is the rotation angle, so 8 degrees. Alright, what if I undo this? See, here I've selected here in the background, that's the command I've done. If I do Z, I do undo, and it's telling me what I'm undoing. Let's do undo one more time. Alright, so we can see that when I did this rotation, oops, let me undo that, we rotated by so many degrees. Right, let's get the pivot point back. I think I've undone the pivot point thing. So let's go D again, V, and snap it down here. So now I'm going to do a rotation. I don't know if it's going to be 45 degrees, but what I can do is I can undo that rotation, Z, then I can copy the command, Control C, or Command C if you're on a Mac. I can paste it here, which is what allows you to run commands, Control V, or Command V if you're on a Mac. And then I'm going to delete this. See, it was almost 45. It's minus 45 in this case. and I'm going to type -45, enter. And now I know, see, that's the command run, that this angle is 45 degrees. And I can do the same thing on the other side. So let's select these guys. D to move the pivot, V to snap it down to this point. And let me show you the... I need to make that a little bit smaller. Okay, and now I'm going to rotate by approximately 45. I was on 40.1 almost. Let's undo this. Copy the rotate command, Control C. Paste it in the command line, Control V, replace this number with 45, and done. I can close this, the script editor, and I've got my 45 degree angle on both sides.